All right, guys, welcome to week 4 of your summer math. And today we are going to talk about something called order of operations. And some people don't know it by this title, but if I say PEMDAS, that is probably something that you've heard before. And the thing is, you start PEMDAS in like 5th or 6th grade, but you start it with numbers that are pretty basic numbers, whole numbers, maybe, numbers 1 through 10, and they're not too terrible. But the reason we need to come back to it now is because last week we talked about negatives and positives. So the difference here is even if you've done PEMDAS before, now we're going to have to make sure that we can still do it. Can you do this with negatives and positives? So those rules from last week are now going to show up every week. So that is something really important that we understand how to work with those, and then we bring it forward to PEMDAS. Now, everybody learns something different, and this is the memory trick I learned when I was a kid, and so I just stick with it. But if you don't like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Like, if that's something that you're like, oh, okay, that sounds like an old lady memory trick, then that's fine. Change it to your own memory trick. But it's to help you remember the P, E, M, D, and the AS. And these stand for math things, and this is the order in which you're supposed to math in. You're supposed to do your math in this order. The P actually stands for parentheses. Parentheses. And that word is spelled weird, but I think I did it right. The E is for exponents. If you see any exponents, you need to do those next. And then MD, okay, the MD is your multiplication or division. Now, why are they grouped together? Let me write it before I say it. Multiplication and division. Okay, the reason these are grouped together, folks, is that multiplication and division are essentially the same thing. They really are. They both have to do with taking numbers and if you're multiplying, you're increasing it by the same amount, but then division is the opposite of multiplication. So they really are grouped together, and you can do these in either order that you want, okay? So that's important to know. And then the last group of things is the AS, which is the addition subtraction. Okay, so even if you learned PEMDAS before, you actually may not have seen these things grouped this way, because some teachers are like, okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Some teachers are like, there's 6 different things and you have to know the order of these 6 things. I'm telling you, there's only actually 4 different things. Because these two go together and these two go together. So there's 4 things that you need to keep straight on what order you do them in. And the best way to practice this is just with examples, okay? So I'm going to quit rambling, and we're going to take this concept of do the operations in this order, and we're going to practice it. Now, if you don't use this order, you will get a different answer, and your answer will be wrong. Like, there's a reason that the math world has set this up. It's so that everybody maths the same and gets the same answers, okay? So let's start down here. Now on this one, that is not a decimal point, that's a multiplication. Remember, if there's a dot in the middle, it means multiply. So here I have 3 times 7 minus 10. Well, when you look at it, you have to decide which one am I supposed to do first, and based on this, if it's multiplication and subtraction, it looks like multiplication comes first, then the subtraction. So the first thing that I do is I always draw myself like, what am I doing first? And I really do draw these little arrows, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do these 2 guys first. So 7 times 3 is 21, and then I recopy the rest, okay? Then on the next step, I'm going to do these 2 together. So what is 21 minus 10? Well, that is, of course, 11, and that would be your final answer. So my paper is going to look like a bunch of little arrows drawn down from line to line, and I highly recommend you do that, guys, to keep track of your work. It slows you down. You won't make little dumb mental errors, okay? All right, so now we have this one, okay? Now I have a subtraction sign and I have an addition sign, and you might be thinking, oh, okay, well, addition, subtraction, I can do whatever I want. But in truth, there are parentheses around these two, and parentheses always need to be done first, okay? So what I would do is work on the math that's inside the parentheses first. So 3 plus 9 is 12. And then I recopy the rest. So I'm just going to bring down my 2, bring down my minus sign. Notice my parentheses are gone. Once you handle the parentheses, like once you actually do the math that's inside of them, you do not need to recopy those parentheses as long as there's nothing else touching it. So like if there had been an exponent, we would maybe need to be careful, or if there'd been a number out front right here, then we would need to be careful and maybe recopy. But this was pretty basic, so I got to drop my parentheses. Okay, and now we do 2 minus 12. Well, 2 minus 12 is weird, right? Because you know that something's not right. The smaller number subtracting the bigger number. So just like last week, when I see a minus, I turn that into plus a negative. I always turn my minus into plus. And when I change that, I have to change that. And so now it's 2 plus a negative 12. Okay, the signs are different. So when the signs are different, then you take the difference in the numbers, which the difference between 2 and 12 is 10. And is it negative or positive? Well, it'll be negative because you go with the sign of the bigger number. So that's just kind of a recap from last week. So that would be how you do that problem. Okay, now we're moving on down to this one. And I can't see the top of my paper, so y'all are going to have to keep looking back at the top. We have 3, we have an exponent, we have a division, we have parentheses, we have addition. It looks like we have a little bit of everything. So I'm going to follow my rules and I'm just going to write PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This is the order I need. So let's handle the parentheses first. So what is 2 plus 1? Well, that would be a 3. And then I'm going to recopy the rest of this. Okay. Now I've handled the parentheses, so my next step would be the exponent, okay? The exponent is right here, so that would be 3 squared, or 3 to the second power. Remember, an exponent just means that you need to multiply this number by itself as many times as that says. So I need to do 3 times 3, and I only have to do it twice because that's the exponent. So 3 times 3 is 9. I'm going to recopy the rest of the problem. So bring down the divide, bring down the 3. And now there is no multiplication, but there is division. So I can do division. 9 divided by 3 is 3. There was no addition or subtraction. I am finished. Okay? All right, next one. So when you look at all this, there's minuses and pluses and times, but I do see a set of parentheses. So I'm going to do that first. So negative 2 minus 5. Okay. Once again, this is weird. Just like last week, there's a minus in the middle. I'm going to change that to plus a negative. Okay? And now a negative 2 and a negative 5, they have the same sign. So you add them together. And if it's a positive plus a positive, you will get, I'm sorry, it's a negative. A negative plus a negative, you will get a negative answer. So I've recopied the parenthesis. Now I'm going to bring down the rest. Plus 3 times 2. Okay. This is where people start to mess up because they just start going from left to right and they mess up and they're like, oh, now I'll do this next. No, you can't do that next. Now that we've done the parenthesis, there is no exponent, but there is a multiply. And that wins. That beats addition. So I'm going to do 3 times 2 is 6. And I'm going to recopy the rest. Bring down the negative 7. Bring down the plus sign. And now we can just do negative 7 plus 6. Okay? This is already a plus. Their signs are opposite. One's a negative, one's a positive. So what's the rule? Okay, the rule is you take the difference, which the difference between 7 and 6 is 1. And then you put a negative on your answer because this is the bigger number. So that's our final answer. Cool. All right, just a couple left. Now we get down here. We've got a division, a multiplication, and a subtraction. So PEMDAS, if we think about PEMDAS, we have to do the multiply, divide, then the add, subtract. Now, if you look at this and you're like, oh, M before D, okay, you actually don't, the reason that M and D are grouped together is because you can do those two, whichever one you want first. And I usually just go left to right, or I do the one that's easier to do. 6 divided by 2, that's pretty easy. So I would actually do the divide first, then the multiply. So I would do 6 divided by 2 is 3. Recopy the times 5, recopy the minus 15, then I would do the multiplication. So these can be done in either order as long as they stay together. These can be done in either order as long as they stay together. So what is 3 times 5? Well, that's 15. Recopy the minus 15. 15 minus 15, that's of course 0. Okay? And the last one, this is the last one, and I know y'all are going to love it because there's a big fat fraction there. Not. But we have to do fractions. They never go away. Okay, let's change colors just because I'm bored of green. Okay, so now we come to this one. This one has a parenthesis and an exponent. I don't see multiply. I don't see divide. And then addition, subtraction. So I'm still going to write this, but let's knock out the parenthesis first. Okay, the parenthesis is 3 minus 2. Well, 3 minus 2 is 1, and then it's got a squared on it, okay? Then I'm going to recopy the rest. 2/3 minus. Okay, so I brought that down, I've done my parenthesis, and it's got a squared. Okay, now we're going to do the exponent. So 1 squared, so 1 times 1. So we only have to do that twice. 1 times 1 is 1. So when I bring that part down, it's a 1. I recopy the 2/3, I recopy the minus, and now I do 2/3 minus 1. Well, a couple of things. First of all, if you have a fraction minus a whole number, you need to make this one a fraction also by sticking it over 1. And then how do we do fractions together? We need a common denominator. The common denominator will be 3. So if I make this a 3, then I have to times the top by 3. So now I'm dealing with 2/3 minus 3/3. And you're supposed to do top minus top and then recopy the denominator. So what is 2 minus 3? Well, if 2 minus 3 is blowing your mind, then remember you can change that minus into plus a negative. These two have different signs, so you take their difference, which is 1, and is it a positive 1 or a negative 1? Well, it's a negative 1 because the 3 is bigger. So that's going off those rules from last week. Or for some of you, it's just easier to go, oh, 2 minus 3, 2 minus 3. If I'm at 2, and I go backwards on the number line by 3, then I'm at negative 1. So that might be something that some of you want to do instead. Sometimes just use a number line and it's quicker, or practice those rules from last week about the signs being different and what you're supposed to do. All right, cool. So those are your practice problems, guys, or not practice, those are your notes problems. And if you'll try the practice problems, as many as you can, before you watch the solution video, don't get frustrated. Show your work, every little step. Bring down your stuff. Draw the little arrowheads. I promise it will help you. And the less that you just do in your head and try to race through, the less likely you are to mess up. All right, later.